expanding possibilities. The Mindset Zone.
I'm your host, Anna Melikian, and I'm here to support you increase your impact while preventing burnout. The Mindset Zone is a place to pause, increase your awareness, and embrace the growth mindset. Find more resources, including information about the Mindset Zone book at mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com is .zone. So today I want to share another story, again from my vacation time in Europe, this time about a typical Portuguese restaurant. This was an experience that I wrote an article in medium.com about the going to a typical Portuguese restaurant in the south of Portugal. And the reflection on it really taught me valuable lessons about stereotypes, cultural perceptions, and even personal growth. And that is the reason why I decided to bring this episode to you today. So imagine a beautiful summer evening, a group of friends going out for dinner. And the context is that I always every year go back to Portugal to visit my family there. And we were with a couple friend of ours, and one friend of these friends that were with us had recommend a typical Portuguese restaurant. And this couple that was with us, they want to thank us for our hospitality, and they were wanting us to go to this restaurant as a thank you. So I went along. I didn't ask too many questions. So it's just they told me what was the neighborhood. I knew that neighborhood in the city where we were staying, very local. So I didn't thought too much about, and there we went to the restaurant for having dinner. And this happened in June during the Euro Cup. So lots of soccer games happening, and that is a big thing in Europe. And in Portugal, mainly when the national team is playing. And that was one of those evenings. We arrived after the game has ended, so the place was packed with people celebrating the game and waiting for the next game. And in spite of the fact that the place had in its name the word restaurant, when I arrived there, it really looked more for me like a typical coffee house in Portugal that also serves meals. And when we arrived there, in spite of the fact that in the day before, these couple friends, they went there to try to make a reservation, but nobody spoke English. What is rare in that area of the country, but it happens. I had phoned that day to make sure that we had a table. When we arrived there was no table ready. But they, even being packed and busy, they were so polite and so nice that they organized things. They put us a couple of tables ready for us, and we sat down. And I have to confess that I start to feel some mixed feelings, even from the beginning. Even when we were approaching the place, I was thinking about, oh gosh, this is what the foreigner thinks that the typical Portuguese restaurant is. And then when we sat down and I was looking to the menu, I was, okay, many things here are not really typical Portuguese food. And in fact, the special of the day was Brazilian bean stew, while we have in Portuguese a very typical Portuguese bean stew, and that was not the Portuguese one. It was in the menu, Brazilian bean stew, that I know that is totally different than the way that we traditionally do in Portugal. And I was not able to articulate my feelings at the time. It was really when you know that you are experiencing a mix of emotions. On one hand, was a vibrant atmosphere there. The crowd was local. In many ways, they were more local than myself. I was born and raised in Portugal, but I live in the United States now for 20 years, and I go back visiting. So I'm more of a tourist than the people that were there in this small restaurant / cafe, that they live in that neighborhood, and that is their place that they go after a day of work to relax with their family and friends. So yes, was a local crowd. They were, how do you say, celebrating the football, and they had beers and they had food, and they were singing Portuguese songs. It was really a fun atmosphere. But I was keep thinking, it's really this that foreigners consider a typical Portuguese restaurant. That was nagging me there. And as the evening progressed, okay, it was a little bit slow, but totally understandable because they were packed. There was really just one waiter navigating all the people there. Possibly they only had one person in the kitchen. We ordered, the food arrived and was tasty. So it was a lovely, lovely evening, an experience that honestly also remember my memories as a student when I was studying in this historic university in Coimbra, that is in the middle of the country, the Portugal, that we as students, we used to go to these little places to have a meal and to enjoy. Brought me memories of my university times. That was very nice. And yes, I savored the moment. And yes, I kept having mixed feelings and some discomfort that I also have to acknowledge. And afterwards, on reflection, I realized that I was reacting to being placed in a very small box. The stereotype of a typical Portuguese restaurant that didn't align with my own perceptions and experience of what I will box in as a typical Portuguese restaurant. And this awareness led me to reflect on the human tendency to categorize, to label, and how uncomfortable it can be when we find ourselves on the receiving end of such categorization. So for one hand, all of us, our brain is the way that we save energy. We put things in boxes, we categorize. And we resist about changing the shape of the boxes because it takes energy and mental effort to do that. So we try to squeeze things in the boxes. It's human nature. Oh, but when we are the things that are being squeezed in the box, that is not nice. And that made me think in my own way that how sometimes I find myself questioning the ever-expanding acronym of the LGBTQ community. I'm dyslexic. So it's very difficult for me sometimes acronyms. I understand an acronym, I adopt it, I try to use it, and then they add more letters to it. And there I'm again, doesn't fit my own box, and I protest against. So now it's LGBTQIA+. And maybe there is other ones out there that are even more inclusive. And I had more understanding and comprehension in that moment because of my minor experience with the restaurant that is so minor comparing to what people in the LGBTQ plus community go through in terms of being categorized, in terms of being put it in boxes. But if as individuals or groups we know that people are going to use specific terms to describe or labels to describe us, putting in categories. At least we want to have some saying about how we are defined. So if they want to have more letters to represent more categories that they feel that identify or represent more their experience, good for them. Even if we put the others outside, protest about that. And it's this dialogue, this back and forward, is this learning that I think is so important, and thank God for the understanding that people have that we need time for learning. So was an experience that allowed me to see what it is to be in the other side of the stereotype, and allow me to do a ton of interesting reflections, and also hopefully to do some personal growth in this process. And I love when we have time to pause and to reflect about these nuances and the complexity of the situations. Because in relation, and going back to the typical Portuguese restaurant, yes, establishments like that do exist throughout Portugal, and they are frequent by local for casual meals and gatherings. Absolutely, they are typical in that sense. And yes, I enjoyed many of these places during my college years, and I had my own typical places to go when I work in Portugal, in the neighborhoods where I was. And at the same time, I react to the label, to that at the label of the typical Portuguese restaurant, because it felt reductive and stereotyping and didn't match my own category of where I will take somebody to represent a typical Portuguese restaurant. So it was really an experience that pushed me into what I like to call the zone of proximal growth. That zone just outside our comfort zones, but not too far out to paralyze us, yet enough to stretch us and to expand us a little. So I have another episode where I describe another situation about this, and I speak this about book, but is that going out our comfort zone just a little, enough that allow us still to be self-aware and not too reactive, and have that space for growth, zone of proximal growth. And I love the situations, the ones that I intentionally put myself in to personal growth, the ones that I find myself into it, like this one, because they prompt me to examine my own awareness about myself, the way that I think, my feelings, and my behaviors and actions, and my habits, my mindsets, my habits of the mind. And in this case was a great opportunity for me to become more self-aware of my own tendencies to stereotype and categorize others. And how does it feel when we are the ones that are put in the box? So, in the end, this lovely dinner in this typical Portuguese restaurant became much more than a meal. It was a great trigger that led to some reflections about cultural perception, a reminder of the pitfalls of oversimplification, and an opportunity for personal growth. I enjoy the food. I enjoy the company. I enjoy the group of people that were there, making a lovely atmosphere, and the songs, the experience, everything. And I will remember this also for the insights it provided me into human nature in general, including my own human nature and limitations and potentials. What experiences out there in this world or lately have allowed you to renew your appreciation for the complexity of cultural identity and the importance of looking beyond the surface level of categorizations? Or what experiences have made you feel that you're being put in a box, that you're being trapped in a stereotype? And so all this is so important for us to do this self-reflection. And that is an opportunity here, an invitation to you. If I will make sure that I put in the show notes the story I wrote about this that I published in medium.com, where I'm trying to do this type of stories, reflections, musings that allow us to press the pause button for a moment, to allow us a space to stop and hopefully to have a moment to increase our self-awareness about how the stories make us feel, what are the thoughts that they elicit, and what actions do they inspire. And then hopefully embrace experimentation, the growth mindset. So for instance, in this case, you can think about the last time you felt boxed in by someone else's perception of your culture or identity. How did you react? What emotions elicit this? And what kind of experiments can you do to play within your own zone of proximal growth? And in the medium.com article, I give like some journal prompts, so to speak, to help people go a little bit deeper and doing that exploration. So this is one of the things that I'm trying to do, to give resources for people to keep the process of personal development happening. And I end this in the PI method. That is something that I speak in length in my book, The Mindset Zone, Actualize Your Potential. That is the PI, P for pause, I for increased self-awareness, and E for embracing experimentation as an amazing tool for personal growth. So until next time, keep embracing the messiness of life and finding new ways to grow beyond stereotypes.
Expanding possibilities, the mindset zone.
Thank you for listening. If you can think of a person who will find this episode helpful, please share it. Spreading the word about the Mindset Zone podcast is very powerful. For extra resources, including information about the book Mindset Zone, Actualize Your Human Potential, go to mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com is .zone. As always, I'm so grateful that you are here. Expand what's possible for you, for the ones around you, for the world.